The mythicist position holds that at the time of Jesus there was nowhere called Nazareth. To maintain this position, they need to explain the origin of the current town of Nazareth, but they do not need to establish that there was no settlement in the area in Jesus' time, just that it was not called Nazareth then. Dealing first with the historical record, there is no mention of Nazareth from any non-Christian sources before the 3rd or 4th centuries AD. This includes the Old Testament, all of the New Testament apart from the Gospels and Acts, Josephus, the Jewish Talmud, and all other ancient writers. This 3rd or 4th century reference is from the so-called Caesarea Nazareth fragment found in 1962. Before it was found, the earliest known non-Christian reference to Nazareth was by the 8th or 9th century Jewish liturgical poet Eliezer HaKalea in his Lamentation for the 9th of Ab. The 19th century rabbi Yehuda Shlomo Rappaport noticed that the lamentation was based on a list of priestly courses of the Second Temple period and where the priestly courses lived. Jewish scholar Samuel Klein developed a theory of the meaning and origin of liturgical poems, including the Lamentation. Klein published his reconstruction of the list in 1939. He also identified the site in Caesarea where he thought a 2nd century synagogue had stood. Klein's list had the word Nazareth on its 18th line, but for all Klein's skill this was still a theoretical and somewhat tenuous assertion. Hence the importance from a Christian perspective of finding a piece of this inscribed list containing the word Nazareth. Israeli archaeologist Professor Avi Yonah directed digs at the Caesarea synagogue site in 1956 and 1962. In 1958, a photograph of a piece of marble slab found on the surface at Caesarea was published. The fragment itself was lost and has never reappeared. This piece bore an inscription that appeared to be part of Klein's list. This find came to be called Fragment C. At the 1962 dig, 2 pieces of marble bearing inscriptions were found, dubbed Caesarea Fragments A and B. Fragment A contained the word Nazareth. Avi Yonah associated these fragments with a synagogue wall plaque inscribed with Klein's putative list. Here is his reconstruction. Comparing Klein's reconstruction with the Caesarea fragments, Fragment A covers 4 lines, and it is an exact match. The most complete example of the list of priestly courses was found in the 1970s on a column in Beit al-Hadir in Yemen. The differences between that list and Klein's list are numerous and in some cases substantial. With that in mind, the perfect match with the Caesarean inscription is impressive, perhaps too impressive. Italian scholar Enrico Tucinardi published a paper in 2010 questioning the authenticity of this find. His article was transcribed into English by René Salm, author of the book The Myth of Nazareth. This is what Tucinardi found. Such an important discovery would normally appear in a high-impact archaeological journal. But instead it appeared in The Teacher's Yoke, a minor parochial publication from Baylor University, a private Christian school in Waco, Texas. This was edited by Professor Jerry Vardaman, who wrote an introduction to the article in which he explains that he himself had discovered Fragment A. Jerry Vardaman was an ordained Baptist minister and professor of biblical archaeology at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary at Fort Worth in Texas, the institution that part-funded both the 1956 and 1962 digs. Vardaman believed in the literal truth of the Bible and was keen to find evidence for the existence of Nazareth. Furthermore, he was aware of Klein's work. The 1958 photograph indicated the likely presence of a synagogue list. Vardaman suspected that this list could contain proof of an early date for Nazareth. This probably prompted Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary to fund the 1962 dig, at which Vardaman was present for 2 months. Vardaman supervised the dig in the area where Fragment A was found on August 14, 1962. It was found in waste soil before it was carted to the dump rather than being identified during excavation. The wheelbarrow man was specifically instructed to look for artifacts in the discarded soil and duly found it. The significance of the word Nazareth was recognized at once. Vardaman had been due to stay on site for a further week, but left on the day of the find. Vardaman's archaeological credibility was later damaged by his involvement in the laughable micro-letters fiasco. Vardaman claimed that he had discovered Roman coins in the British Museum on which were written letters so small they could only be read with magnification. They referred to Jesus, and from them he inferred that Jesus was born in 12 BC. Among the many reasons for dismissing this claim are that the microletters simply are not on the coins, that such letters could not have been stamped with first-century technology, and that even if they had been, the coin details were worn off. Further, the coin text was in Greek, but the letters were in Latin and included the letters J and W that were not part of ancient Latin. An argument countering Tuccinadi's analysis has yet to appear, but the situation is suspicious. Vardaman had the motive, means, opportunity, and maybe the inclination to perpetrate a forgery. It seems credible that the possibility of finding a fragment bearing the word Nazareth was what motivated the funding of the 1962 excavation. Furthermore, with the fragment C photograph and Klein's list in hand, it would be a simple matter to forge fragment A. It is possible that as the 1962 dig drew to an end without finding the evidence Vardaman was looking for, he had the piece forged using Klein's text. It would of course be far easier to plant the forgery in waste soil and have it discovered from there than to plant it in the ground. Furthermore, you will note that we cannot place the finding of fragment C entirely above suspicion either, though this does not seem to have involved Vardaman. On the other hand, if it was a forgery, it wasn't a very good one. In this picture produced by Tuccinadi, we can see the three fragments. We have no scale for fragment C because only a photograph exists, and that has no scale information on it. Nevertheless, neither of the other fragments are a good match for the character spacing to height ratio of fragment C. They're not a great match to each other either, but this is more uncertain as fragment B contains so little text.